I want you to try a little thought experiment with me. It's 3 a.m., you are dead asleep.
Okay.
Suddenly, you hear the unmistakable sound of glass shattering downstairs. Your heart just hammers against your ribs. You grab your phone and you dial 911. Now here's the question. Who do you picture showing up at your door?
I mean, I know exactly who I picture. It's usually a cross between a linebacker and a granite statue.
Right. You're picturing someone who looks like they bench press small cars for a warm-up, someone with a jawline you could crack a walnut on, and a scowl that basically says, I eat danger for breakfast.
It's the classic archetype.
Exactly. We want our protectors to be monsters, in a way. We want the tough guy.
And it makes sense psychologically. When we feel vulnerable, we want someone invincible to step in between us and the threat. But today, we're going to completely dismantle that image.
We really are. We're doing a deep dive into a set of memoirs from a retired police officer, and it completely strips away that Hollywood veneer.
It shows us the messy, chaotic, and frankly, physically limited reality of the job.
And the first crack in the armor is the author himself. He is very honest about his stats. He's 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds. Now, to me, that sounds like a normal, healthy guy.
In a coffee shop, sure. But in the world of physical confrontation, especially in the era he was working dealing with massive farm boys and barroom brawlers.
Right.
180 pounds is light. He wasn't the biggest guy in the room, ever. If he tried to be the tough guy based on brute strength alone, he would have been crushed.
So if he isn't The Rock, how does he survive? That's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to look at the mechanics of real-world violence, the physics of subduing someone twice your size, and this incredibly profound concept the author calls leisure versus pandemonium.
That last point, leisure versus pandemonium, is going to change how you watch the news. It's a brilliant insight. But to understand it, we have to start where the author started.
In the gap between fiction and physics.
Exactly.
He admits in the book that he was a sucker for those old Louis L'Amour westerns. You know the ones.
Where the saloon fight lasts for like 40 pages.
Exactly. The hero takes a wooden chair across the back, shakes his head, throws 3 perfect punches, tackles the villain through a window, rolls down a dusty hill.
And then gets up to finish the fight with a witty one-liner.
Yes. The author loved reading that stuff.
Yeah.
But his reality, he says a real fight on the street lasts 15 seconds, maybe 20.
And that is such a critical distinction. In cinema, violence is a conversation. It has a rhythm to it. It has choreography.
But in reality?
In reality, violence is an explosion. It's a blur. The author notes that afterward, nobody, not the cops, not the suspects, can tell you exactly what happened. It is just an adrenaline dump and pure reaction.
And in that 15-second blur, if you are a 180-pound officer facing a 280-pound suspect, you do not have time to trade punches. You will lose.
You'll lose, and you might get hurt badly. This brings us to the physics of policing. The author describes a series of incidents at the old Metropolitan Stadium that perfectly illustrate this.
Back in the Harmon Killebrew era.
Yeah.
I love this story because the setting is just so specific. You can almost smell the hot dogs and the stale beer. So, the author is a rookie. He's walking down a concrete hallway and a fan steps right into his path. And this isn't just a fan. This guy is a mountain.
The author lays out the stats. The guy is 6 inches taller than him and weighs 100 pounds more. 100 pounds. That is a massive weight class difference.
In a boxing ring, the referee wouldn't even let them touch gloves.
No way! And the guy knows it. He puts his hands on his hips, looks down at the officer and says, "I can whip any 10 cops here."
Which, to be fair, is a bold opening line.
It is. But the author notes the smell of beer breath was strong, so we know the alcohol was doing the talking. Now watch the officer's internal reaction. He doesn't puff up his chest. He doesn't get angry. He actually thinks he is underestimating how many cops he can whip.
He tried to walk away. He really tried to ignore it, but the guy shows him. And this is where the 15-second reality kicks in. The officer doesn't square up. He doesn't throw a hook.
No, because if he trades impact for impact, he loses. The author explains that he sidestepped. He used the man's own forward momentum against him. It's basically judo. You don't stop the train, you just switch the tracks so the train hits the wall.
And in this case, the wall was the floor.
Exactly.
He says he used the concrete floor as his partner. He slammed his full 180 pounds onto the guy right as he hit the deck.
That's the leverage. When that 280-pound man is off balance and falling, he has zero power. When he hits the ground hits him harder than a fist ever could, and suddenly the fight is over.
And the crowd's reaction is great. Another officer, Orv Harrison, helps cuff the guy, and they walk him out. The crowd is just staring at this average-sized cop leading away a giant. They think it's magic.
But it's just physics. Gravity is the great equalizer. There was another incident at a Vikings game that highlights this even better, and it introduces the human variable that messes up standard procedure.
Oh, this started as a lark, right? A fan jumping the railing onto the field.
Usually, that's just a game of tag. The ushers chase the guy, everyone cheers, he gets escorted out with a fine. Low stakes. But this time, an usher caught the guy in the tunnel and, well, he wouldn't let it go.
The usher kept screaming at him, really berating him.
Right, and you have to understand the psychology of the fan here. He's caught, he probably feels foolish, but now he's being humiliated. The usher's poking the bear, and eventually the bear swipes back, the fan snaps, grabs the usher, and slams him into the wall. Now it's not a lark, it's an assault.
So our author steps in. Again, he doesn't throw punches.
Headlock and a hip throw. Simple mechanics. Where the head goes, the body must follow. And he writes this line that really stuck with me. The cement took about 75% of the fight out of him.
That is visceral. It really drives home the point that the environment is a weapon. But the author also reflects on this in a way that feels very vulnerable. He says he was bemused that he never lost one of these brawls. He never went looking for them. He preferred to talk people down. But when it happened, he had to win.
And that's the shadow hanging over this entire memoir. It's not a sport. There is no referee. If an officer loses a fight, they lose consciousness. And if they lose consciousness, the gun on their hip belongs to the other guy.
Wow.
That fear, that lost fight means lost life equation, is what drives the intensity of that 15 seconds.
It's life or death, even if it just looks like a scuffle. Now, speaking of things that escalate quickly, let's talk about weddings.
Ah, yes. The social events.
You'd think the most dangerous calls for a cop would be, I don't know, armed robbery, gang violence. But the author is absolutely adamant. The domestic calls and the social brawls were the most volatile.
It makes perfect sense if you think about it. A robbery is transactional. Give me the money, I leave. It's business. A domestic dispute or a wedding brawl, that is pure emotion. You have history, you have resentment, and usually you have an open bar. You are walking into a pressure cooker that has been building steam for years.
The department actually had a policy to always send 2 squads to domestics, just to separate the combatants. But the author brings up a really interesting point here about the bad partner.
This is a nuance you don't see on TV cop shows where everyone is a hero. He developed a short list of officers he hated working with on these calls. And it wasn't because they were scared.
It was the exact opposite.
Exactly. Some officers like to fight. They lacked the diplomatic gene. They wouldn't try to de-escalate. They'd throw gasoline on the fire. And in a volatile domestic situation, that is the most dangerous thing you can do.
He tells this wild story about the local VFW hall, which hosted wedding dances all the time. He paints this picture of absolute absurdity. People in full tuxedos throwing chairs, bridesmaids throwing punches.
He specifically mentions the danger of fighting a woman in a strapless gown, which sounds funny, but practically, how do you restrain someone without causing a wardrobe malfunction that leads to a lawsuit? It is a nightmare.
But the story that really got me was the groom. This is his wedding night. And he is trading punches with a groomsman.
The officers pull them apart. They try to be the good partners. They say, hey, cool it, it's your wedding. But the adrenaline and the alcohol are just too strong. As soon as the officer lets go, the groom lunges again.
At that point, you have no choice.
No choice at all. You can't let them assault each other. So the groom goes to jail on his wedding night.
And the punchline to this tragedy, it's 5 a.m., the officer's back at the station. Who walks in?
The bride, still in her wedding dress, probably ruined, makeup running. She's there to bail him out.
The author writes how that marriage worked out and just leaves it there.
It highlights the unpredictability of it all. You are dealing with people at their absolute worst, in moments that should be their best. And you have to manage that without getting hurt.
Speaking of getting hurt, I want to circle back to the physics for a second, because the author drops a piece of wisdom that feels completely counterintuitive. We talked about the big 280-pound guy, but he says those weren't the hardest to handle.
No. He says the nightmare scenario was the little wiry guys.
Explain that to me. Because in my head, mass equals difficulty.
It's about leverage and surface area. A large person is heavy, sure, but they often move slower. Their joints work like everyone else's. A smaller, wiry person, they have a lower center of gravity. They are fast. They can squirm and twist in ways a larger person just can't. It's like trying to hold on to a feral cat versus holding on to a golden retriever.
The author describes a struggle with one of these wiry guys that is honestly terrifying. He has the man pinned, one wrist cuffed, but he cannot get the other arm behind the man's back.
This story really reveals the mindset of resistance. The officer is forcing the arm back, warning the guy, bring your arm back or I'll break it. He is giving him the choice. He is basically pleading with him to comply so he doesn't have to cause injury.
And the suspect, he's screaming. But he's not screaming, okay, he's screaming, break it off, break it off.
Think about that. The suspect is literally shouting for his own arm to be snapped rather than let the officer win. That is a level of resistance that goes way beyond logic. It's primal. The officer isn't negotiating with a rational human being. He's wrestling with pure, chemically fueled obstinance.
And while this life-or-death wrestling match is happening on the ground, with the guy begging for a broken arm, we see another aspect of the job, the isolation, because they aren't alone on the street.
There's cab driver.
Parked 5 feet away. 5 feet.
Close enough to reach out and touch.
Elbow out the window. Just watching, like it's a spectator sport.
Yeah.
The officer locks eyes with him, silently pleading for help. Just someone to grab the other arm, and the driver puts the car in gear and speeds off.
The bystander effect is real, but here it feels even colder. It's that glass wall between police and the public. People want to see what happens, but they do not want to be involved. They treat it like TV. But the author does share one moment, just one, that restores a bit of faith.
The "we're with you, officer" moment.
Yes, this was a traffic stop. 2 rough-looking men both turn out to have active warrants. The driver decides he's not going back to jail, so he fights. As the officer is wrestling the driver on the pavement, he's terrified.
Because of the passenger.
Exactly. He's occupied with the driver. His back is turned to the passenger door. He is outnumbered and blind. That is the ultimate nightmare scenario. He's waiting for a boot to hit his ribs or a hand to grab his gun.
And then, out of nowhere, a civilian and his teenage son run up.
And this is the key. They didn't jump into the fight. They didn't try to play hero and start swinging. They did exactly what was needed tactically. They stood guard. They told the officer, "We're with you," and they watched the passenger to keep him in the car.
They covered his 6.
They bought him the safety to finish the arrest. The author says he hopes he thanked them properly, but he was so exhausted and adrenaline dumped he can't even remember. It really underscores how rare that help is.
So, we have talked about the fights, we've talked about the wiry guys and the drunks, but there is another category of person the police deal with, where force is absolutely the wrong answer, even if the person is violent.
The medical emergencies, specifically diabetics having an insulin reaction.
I hadn't really thought about this overlap before.
It's frighteningly common. When a diabetic suffers from hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, the brain is literally starving. The symptoms mimic severe intoxication perfectly. Slurred speech, staggering, confusion,
And rage.
pure irrational aggression.
So the officer sees a guy swinging at him, screaming, looking like a mean drunk. But the officer has to have the experience to realize this isn't a crime. This is a medical crisis.
The cure isn't handcuffs, it's a candy bar. But imagine the discipline that takes. You have a full-grown adult trying to punch you, and you have to decide not to fight back.
The author says he would have felt terrible subduing someone in that state physically. He says they only deserved help and sympathy, not a takedown. So what did he do?
He used his words, he cajoled, he persuaded, he distracted.
He says it taxed his diplomatic skills more than anything else. Imagine trying to reason with a brain that is chemically incapable of reason.
It completely inverts the tough guy myth. The tough thing to do there isn't to dominate the suspect. The tough thing is to endure the abuse, to dodge the swings, and to talk them down until you can get sugar into their system.
Oh.
It requires a diagnostic brain, not just muscle.
This brings us to the present day. The author is retired now. He's looking back at his career and he's looking at modern policing. And he brings up a concept that I think is the most important takeaway of this entire discussion.
The leisure versus pandemonium gap.
Let's unpack this. Because he acknowledges that modern cops have better tools, tasers, cameras, better training. But the core reality, the 15-second blur, hasn't changed. What has changed is the aftermath.
The scrutiny. The author argues that there is a fundamental disconnect between the experience of the officer and the experience of the public watching the video later.
So pandemonium is what the officer's feeling.
Right. Pandemonium is the fight. It's the beer breath. It's the wiry guy trying to break his own arm. It's the fear that the passenger is going to jump on your back. It's a state of survival where time speeds up and decision-making is purely instinctual. That is pandemonium.
And leisure.
Leisure is us. It's the public. It's the judge. It's watching the body cam footage on your phone 3 days later. We are sitting in a comfortable chair. We have a cup of coffee. We pause the video. We rewind it. We zoom in. We say, why didn't he step to the left? Why did he grab the wrist instead of the elbow?
We're critiquing the geometry of a struggle we can't feel.
Exactly. We're applying the logic of a chess match to a bar fight. The author isn't saying that officers shouldn't be held accountable. If they mess up, they mess up. But he is asking us to acknowledge that gap. When you watch a video in leisure, you have stripped away the fear, and the fear is the primary driver of the action in Pandemonium.
It's really easy to say he should have de-escalated when you aren't the one facing a guy who outweighs you by 100 pounds and has just promised to wipe the floor with you.
It changes the context completely. The author ends his memoirs with a very reflective tone. He admits he couldn't do the job anymore. He says he shouldn't be on the job. The stress, the fights, it takes a huge toll. But he expresses immense gratitude.
Gratitude for the ones who still do it.
For those who run toward danger, that's the defining characteristic. Most of us, like the cab driver, we drive away, we freeze. But the officer has to step in. They have to manage the wedding brawl, they have to diagnose the insulin reaction while dodging punches, and they have to survive the 15 seconds of chaos.
It's a powerful place to leave it. We started this deep dive by mocking the tough guy image, the guy who bench presses a Buick. But I think we found a different definition of toughness today.
Absolutely. Real toughness isn't about looking scary. It's about the resilience to handle the chaos, the restraint to handle the sick, and the courage to step into the pandemonium when everyone else is watching from the leisure of the sidelines.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. The next time you see a viral clip of an arrest or a struggle, try to apply that leisure versus pandemonium filter. Ask yourself, am I judging the geometry of a struggle I can't feel? Or am I acknowledging the human fear involved in that split second?
It's a perspective that really changes everything.
It sure is. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.